Dr. Elizabeth Hafer wants you to get your head on straight. In a world gone sideways, having balance and integrity in all areas of life leads to having confidence that breeds clarity. Clarity is essential to living an authentic life, and all the information shared on the Get Your Head On Straight podcast is designed to inspire you to live your life fulfilled. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Get Your Head On Straight with Dr. Elizabeth Hafer. Today, my guest is Tracy Hazzard, who is an Inc. columnist and the CEO of Haz Design. Besides that, she's been featured in Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Wired, and CNN Money. She's an accomplished author, and she hosts several of her very own podcasts. The reason why I'm so excited to have her on my show today is because she has a really incredible story about the power of Blair Upper Cervical Chiropractic and how it has helped her family. I have the pleasure of taking care of them at my practice, Well Connected Chiropractic in Mission Viejo, California, and I can't wait for you to hear her story on how Blair Chiropractic has helped her and her family. And I am so excited about my guest today. Tracy Hazzard is an Inc. columnist, and actually she and her husband Tom are the reason why this podcast even exists. And I'm going to get to explain more about that, but I'm just really excited to introduce you to Tracy, and we're going to talk today about her being my patient at my chiropractic practice, Precision Chiropractic in Rancho Santa Margarita, California. So welcome, Tracy.
Thank you for having me. So excited to talk to you today.
I'm so excited to talk to you. So obviously you're incredible and you are a woman of many talents, among them being an Inc. columnist and starting this amazing company called Brand Casting You. So you came to me probably a year ago and you just said, hey, I really think you should do a podcast. And I said, okay, let's do it. And so now here we are sometime later creating this content, and you have so many people going for this as well. It's just so exciting. But even before we talked about doing podcasting, you were actually a patient of mine at the clinic.
That's right. I think I may have met you like your first week in the job there.
Yeah.
Because I'm in a lot. So it's the and. So I'm Inc. columnist and head of Brand Casting You and speaker, author, and, you know, like you add all those ands up. This is why I'm out of alignment.
Correct. And I totally appreciate that because I am a chiropractor and a wife and a mother and a board member for the Blair Chiropractic Society, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And thankfully, my chiropractic doctor works across the hall. So
That's right.
I get checked a little more often than you can.
Well, I like having an in with you. So this is so true.
It's so fantastic.
But it's that and stuff that gets to us. And it is the reason why I was so happy to have discovered Blair Chiropractic, which I'm happy to tell you that story, but it was classic, get in an accident and end up in a chiropractor's office. And luckily for me, it happened to be Dr. Forrest in Northern California and a great Blair chiropractor.
Right. And what's great about Dr. Forrest is he is the man who trained me how to do Blair Upper Cervical Chiropractic in Davenport, Iowa when I was a student. So you were already seeing him as a patient while I was getting trained in a different part of the country. And so that's why I then became an instructor for the Blair Chiropractic Society, because I want to be able to pay forward what I was given, which is this incredible gift of Blair. And so when I met you, you're right. I was a student intern. I was fresh out of my 9th trimester at Palmer College. And I came in just as excited as can be to be everybody's favorite Blair doctor. And then I quickly realized, wait a second, Dr. Tomp is the one who's actually the doctor. And I'm just this amazing intern. So I got to meet you, and rightfully so, every person was completely terrified to let me touch them.
Well, it's really personal, right? So when I left Dr. Forrest's office, it's because we moved down to Southern California. So I didn't have a choice, but I had already seen Dr. Tomp a couple of times. And so you get dependent on making sure that, hey, I'm going to come out of this and I'm going to feel better in like 12 hours, right? I know I'm going to wake up and I'm going to feel better. So it is really hard to let that go, especially when you have someone you trust and you're really good at. But for me, I think that when I came into the office and met you and got a chance to know you, that I realized that you had your own gifts.
Right.
And that complemented Dr. Tomp's. And that was really great for me to be able to feel like I could go back and forth and be absolutely back on the road to doing all the ands the next day.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that you were willing to give me the chance. And you know what's really neat is that I think what we really bonded over is our children.
Yeah.
Is the connection that we had, because it's interesting. We were actually pregnant at the same time, 2 different times.
That's right.
And the other interesting connection we have is that we both have an older daughter of these 2 little girls that is significantly older than the 2 little girls.
Yeah. If I hadn't been with you when you were pregnant and I was pregnant, like I'd swear our daughters were twins. Like the 2 little ones are exactly alike.
I know. It's so much fun when they get together and play. It's like we just look at them and we're in awe of how similar they are.
Yeah. It had to be something in the water or something at that time. Yeah. I don't know what it is. Maybe it was, being constantly adjusted.
That's funny.
But yeah, I mean, this is the thing is that I think, when you're building a practice like you are and building up your client base, you really have to find a way to connect, especially when you're working out of someone else's office. You have to find a way to connect and bond with them. And for us, the kids were the way, the pregnancies were the way. It just worked out for us that way.
Yeah.
And also because you had started treating Tom and the rest of our family, or Alexandra at that time was only the rest of our family at the first time, but you were treating them and they were experiencing the same results that I had been experiencing with Dr. Tom. So when you see that, the results, happy patients around you, and then you have a chance to connect. So I think it was really important that you reached out, you got to know me, you were friendly in the office, you met the other patients, and even though they're not yours, I'm putting air quotes that you can't see on the air, but they're not yours, but there's important to find a way to bond with them.
Absolutely. And part of the reason for Dr. Tomp even bringing me in as an intern and then eventually an associate and now kind of more like a business partner is because he recognized that this thing that we do called Blair has so much implication, and he wanted somebody else in there to help him because he's only one person and there's only so much one person can do in a day. And he wanted to have a bigger impact in his community. And so me coming in, it was perfect timing, and me meeting you guys was incredible. So what I really wanted to talk to you about today is, why is it that you decided to trust your brand new babies with me and chiropractic? Because that is something that most people kind of get wide-eyed and kind of concerned about when they hear about parents bringing their babies to a chiropractor.
So it wasn't a quick decision for me. When I first got in that car accident that I started seeing Dr. Forrest in, Alexandra was in the car with me. And so I started seeing it and didn't bring her at first. And it wasn't until she started complaining about some problems with her hips and some other things that I realized the connection between, well, she was in the back seat, but it doesn't mean she wasn't impacted by that accident. And so I brought her in at that time. And so I think she was 5th or 6th grade. So she was 10, 11 at that time. And so not super young, but young enough to think twice about whether or not you wanted to bring them into a chiropractic office. But at that time, I also had enough experience with it to know it was very scientific based. There was x-rays involved. There was no serious cracking. Like, you had this imagination. I had never seen any kind of chiropractor before I saw Blair. So I didn't know any different. And so, but to knowing that, oh, wow, this is not invasive. It's not dangerous. It doesn't feel harsh. And I feel so much better afterwards. That's what I wanted for her, was that benefit. And I didn't want her to have that experience. So it started with being comfortable with Alex at 10.
Right.
And then being treated throughout my pregnancy, which I found essential. Like, I don't think I could have functioned through my whole pregnancy. I'm not sure I actually would have ever gotten that baby out without some chiropractic help towards the end there.
It's so incredible that you just mentioned that, because prenatal pregnancy while you're pregnant is so incredibly vital for the position of the pelvis to be able to then give birth to the baby and have everything develop. Because think about it. If you remember from previous podcasts, or even if you don't ever know, I'm going to explain it now. The nervous system is what dictates everything. And if structure dictates function, then your nervous system, which is surrounded by bones, are going to dictate how you're functioning. So if you're growing a baby inside of you, you want to have the best environment possible. And chiropractic is the way to get that done.
Right. And I always just think about it from like the total layman's terms. Like, you go into the office and they measure your hips. It's the first thing they do. And it's up on one side, down on the other, whatever it is that it might be. And there's like a little string line, and you could see it and you go, wow, my hips are like that. No wonder my back is sore, right? Or no wonder my hip hurts, or whatever that might be. When thinking about that, the last thing you need when you're trying to deliver a baby is to have your hips not be level and have it not be as wide up as possible, right?
Absolutely.
Like, that's all I could think about. You're going to push out a big old baby. My last one was almost what was she? Like almost a 10-pounder.
Right.
So like, I could not have, I'm 5'2".
Right.
I could not have done that if I wasn't like as wide as possible.
Yeah. So with your experience with your middle daughter, tell me how that went and how quickly did you get her in to see a chiropractor after she was born?
So with Linnea, I didn't bring her in right away. She had a really healthy birth and I felt like she was doing fine. And it was actually a bit later where we brought her in, and it was because she was having a lot of emotional issues. So it was more of an emotional problem. And I was starting to sort of see a pattern where she was feeling a little headachy and then she would throw these tantrums, and she was like 5, 6 years old. And I thought, okay, that's way too old to be throwing temper tantrums. That should be done in the terrible 2s and 3s, right? That should be over by now. And I was starting to see that and think, when I don't feel well, when I'm out of alignment, I'm really, really, really nasty, like very nasty. Like I bite the heads off of just about anyone. And so I thought there might be a connection. And if I didn't rule it out, then that's shame on me.
Right.
And so that's when we first started talking to you about it. And you had been adjusting your daughter for similar reasons. And I thought, this is the thing. This is what we need to try to see if it's working. We had actually tried psychology and some other things, and none of that was working. And so I thought, this is something I need to try for her. I didn't have a physical reason to feel like she needed it, but the emotional reason was strong enough. My connection to understanding how the body works enough that I said, I have to do this. It's really worked for her. We can see the difference.
Right.
It significantly reduced her ability to control her emotions.
Right.
Significantly increased her ability to control her emotions.
Right. I think that it's so important that parents hear what you're saying. You had gotten chiropractic for yourself because of a physical problem, but you noticed when you went out of alignment, you had an emotional response.
Oh, definitely.
You were angry, and maybe you were a little bit more feisty, or you didn't handle things as well as you know you can. And then you noticed that your 4 or 5-year-old daughter started having these fits that were kind of outgrown from being a toddler. And then you thought, wait a second, there's no physical issue except for maybe sometimes she gets a headache, but then she has these horrible emotional outbursts. How incredible as a parent for you to kind of put the line or connect the dots. So you brought her in, and I remember we did a really great exam and we took some x-rays. And the interesting thing about taking x-rays on kids is they're young, and so
they're curious.
They're very curious. So you have to obviously allow yourself some more time to answer questions, which is 100% okay. I'd rather spend an hour doing education and planting the seeds of this kid knowing that what we're doing is going to be benefiting them forever than just blowing them off, because their brilliant little minds are just absorbing everything. So she asked a ton of questions, but she also isn't fully developed like an adult is. Like her bones aren't fully ossified. So we don't take the same type of x-rays or the same amount. So there's a significantly less radiological risk, if you will, to having any kind of exposure. We were able to take 4 pictures, and we were able to get a listing for her atlas and give her an adjustment. And I remember night and day difference in her behavior.
Yeah. And actually, since then, we took 2 more.
Right.
Because she grew, right?
Yes.
And so we have taken more as she's gotten older, which has helped keep it in alignment and keeping your data right, I guess, with your listing.
Yes.
If that's what you call it. But the interesting thing about it is that for Linnea specifically, she had been in the office when we'd been adjusted, either Tom, Alexandra, or I. So when any one of us, so she was really comfortable with you. And so it was she knew what was coming. She knew she was going to lie on this table. She knew what she was going to do. So it was really easy for her to feel comfortable.
Right. And that's what's really fun when I take care of whole families, is that even if they aren't a patient yet, I always just, hey, let's do a leg check and see how you're doing. Because not every kid needs to be adjusted, but it's important to have the doctor know what to look for to then make the determination that, yes, we actually do need to make a correction. Let's do a proper exam. Let's take the pictures that we need. Let's scan the neck and get information about the nervous system so that we can make that precise correction very gently. And then they can experience the same wholeness that their parents are experiencing.
Well, and I think back to when we brought Alexandra in when she was 10 or whatever. That's right about the time when they start checking you for scoliosis and stuff as you get a little bit older than that. And she had been having these hip problems from the accident, really, that her hips were out of alignment. And sure enough, she went into one of those school scoliosis tests, and they came back saying, oh yeah, she's got a problem. She needs to go see a specialist. And I immediately took her in. At that time, I think Dr. Tomp was the only one in that office at the time when I took her in. But I took her in, Dr. Tomp. He's like, no, we'll have her fixed and go have her checked again. And she went back to the school. They did the check and they were like, oh, there's no indication at all. Like it was that immediate of a difference.
Right.
And so for me, realizing that there's a growth pattern issue with kids as well, I think it's really important to keep checking.
Yeah, I mean, we could diverge on 16 different subjects just with your kids alone. Scoliosis and behaviors and all kinds of
Oh, we haven't even talked about the baby yet.
I know. The baby is the one that I get to have the biggest. It was just so remarkable. We'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to Linnea because, yes, as you mentioned, we did recently take a couple more films, and that's because she's almost 9, right?
Yeah.
So at age 7, between 7 and 7.5, your atlas, which is the first bone underneath your skull, ossifies, which means it becomes completely hard and it's fully developed. And we were going off a pediatric listing system, and we noticed that when we would give Linnea an adjustment, she either wouldn't hold it very well or it wasn't quite clearing her out like it used to. And as a doctor, I started observing like something's amiss. We're doing the same thing, but we're not getting the same result. And that is uncharacteristic of a Blair correction.
Characteristic kids, because our experience with her was she would hold really well. Kids seem to hold well.
They do. They're very resilient, even despite the fact that they participate in things like trampolines, bounce houses. And the like. So,
well, we have Linnea so trained that after a bounce house, she immediately says, "Can you make an appointment, Dr. Hafer, please?"
I love it. That is the best. I love it. I wish every kid could have that conversation with their parent. That'd be incredible. So we took a couple more pictures about 5 months ago, and we found a couple new listings because she had participated in trampolines and bounce houses and things. And we were able to engineer a more specific correction based on her body right now. And ever since we've been able to do that new adjustment, it's been even more groundbreaking with the things that happen or don't happen, I should say, with her behavior. It's incredible. And you know, it's really neat. When she comes in, she just gives me the biggest hug. And I feel like she's part of my family. And I love that her and my daughter, Michaela, are like 6 months apart in age, and they are like really good friends. So if I am doing something and talking to Tracy or Tom, or they come into the office and Michaela happens to be in with my husband, they just instantly have this connection. And it's like building this community around this incredible thing called Blair Chiropractic. And yes, they're my patients, but they've become family.
Yeah,
and it's so rewarding. And so neither one of us can move away from each other.
I know, it's not possible.
It isn't. I mean, we both need each other, so.
I know. And when Vanessa found out that Michaela was here a couple weeks ago, and she got all upset because Claire wasn't here.
Right. But both of those girls were in school, so.
I know. It's like, whoops.
I know.
Anyway.
So I want to talk about Vanessa because that was a really awesome experience for you to have just delivered her and then notice some stuff going on.
Yeah, I had a really difficult delivery with her because she was almost 10 pounds. I'm 5'2", and she had a bunch of issues, cord wrapped around her neck, and they had to do this technique where they swipe your shoulder up over to sweep and get you out of there. It has a name. I can't remember it because I think I blocked it out of my head.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
And so, yeah, so basically what they do is they twist their shoulder, and a lot of times they break their clavicle.
Correct.
And in her case, she had something they called shoulder dystocia, which is basically like her shoulder hurt. I mean, that's how I took it, because I would be breastfeeding her, and on that shoulder, she would almost like wince and not want to feed long enough. Like she'd want to switch to the other side, and then she'd just go to town. So I knew there was an issue with the shoulder from the moment that she was born. They had cautioned us. They'd put her into ICU, and she was this giant baby in ICU, which was the weirdest thing ever. But she had lost her breath. It was very traumatic. And so I was really, all I kept thinking about the whole time that I was in the hospital was how fast can I get out, and how soon can Dr. Hafer see her? Because I kept thinking she's going to have this shoulder problem for the rest of her life if I don't do something before it starts growing.
Right.
Like that was what went through my head, was how important it was. And the fact that I probably needed to get seen myself was like at the second on my list of things, because right after delivery, after both deliveries, I came in within days of delivering. It was like the one thing to get out of bed for and get adjusted. So
right. Yeah. And with Vanessa, also her inability to even move her arm because her shoulder hurt so bad. It was clear one side was completely functional, and the other side, she was almost as if she was splinting it herself.
Right. Yeah. It was like she squeezed it up against her body and couldn't pull it out all the way to the side.
Trying to get her dressed.
And they did x-rays and stuff in the hospital where they checked it all out, and there was no fractures or there was no big issues. If anything, it might have been dislocated. But even then, they were like, no, it seems like it's back in place. They had someone look at it there before they released us. But I didn't trust that. I just didn't, because I could see it when I was feeding her.
Absolutely. And this is your third daughter, and you have that thing called mother's instinct. And that thing is one of the most powerful things on the planet. And just knowing that even though there wasn't anything, air quotes, quote unquote, wrong with her, according to the medical professionals, there was a functional issue happening.
And I knew it. I could tell. And I had an issue with my shoulder that has been a recurring problem. And I just know how debilitating that is. And I didn't want that for her.
Right. So tell me about when you brought her into the office and how different it is, because with babies, we can take x-rays, but I just choose not to. So it was a completely different exam and a totally different.
Yeah. I mean, it was really like, you're just like, let me hold the baby. You know, I mean, it was really that kind of calm. And I knew it would be. I didn't knew you weren't going to stick her on the table, right? You know, I mean, it just wasn't going to be. Right, exactly. I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be that way. It doesn't mean you're not nervous as a parent, right? I mean, that's something that it does go through your mind, this precious baby that you just spent 9 months warming up and getting out into the world. And so there's this little bit, but any fear that I have, the fact that I knew you so well and you had your own babies and I knew the care that you would take, it meant more to me than the care that I received in the hospital from people I didn't know.
Right. So we got her adjusted. And then tell me, how soon did you notice a difference?
I think it was pretty right away. I mean, you could see it within a week, I would say. I mean, you could definitely see a distinctive difference in how she was. And I've always watched for it. And I don't see, she seems to use both arms just perfectly fine. She's 3 now. And I think we'll have a little more tell. I think when we see her like throwing balls and writing, what arm will she choose? Will she be our only lefty? Like, I'm wondering if that will happen just by choice or if it's really gone. But I don't see a problem anymore. I don't see her restricting her movement. I don't see that happening even when I know that we've gone in and she is out of alignment or something. That's not the effect. I don't see it in her shoulder.
Right. And she's 3 and we started getting her adjusted immediately. So she held that first adjustment for a long time. And I mean, think about it. If you get a newborn adjusted, what possible thing could cause them to go out of alignment, except for maybe a sibling picking them up and dropping them or car seat malfunction of some kind?
Well, once they start walking, it's different. Yeah,
exactly. So the minute they start walking and the minute start running and being a toddler, that's when stuff starts to pop up. But she held her first adjustment for over a year.
Yeah, I think she rolled off the ottoman and I was like, we're bringing her in.
I remember that story and they were terrified. They're like, no, we have to get her checked immediately, the shoulder. And I was like, oh yeah, she's out, but there's no issue with her shoulder. It was just that, the ottoman issue. Yeah. And when I'm interviewing parents, because they bring their older kids in, I'm like, okay, let's talk about their birth, because I always want to know the birth story. I want to know, how was it when they were an infant? Did they prefer breastfeeding on one side or another? Because moms remember a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I also want to find out, like, okay, what did their siblings do? Did they pick them up out of the crib? Did they drop them off the couch? At school, did they learn how to do the monkey bars too soon type of thing? So it's interesting to learn the way kids can get hurt, but it's also incredible to know that parents are there trying to get their kids back on track so that they don't have to be 45 years old or however old, having suffered for needlessly, when they could just get the stuff addressed as a kid.
Well, and I don't think I have to worry about that. So Tom started seeing you guys when they got in a car accident, and Alexandra was in the car and she burst into tears and, you got to take me into Dr. Tom and Dr. Hafer now. Like she burst into tears about that the minute she got this fender bender. And Tom was like, okay, well, I'll go too. And that's how he started to go. And Linnea, bounce house, whenever it happens, take me in. But Vanessa, she's a really good talker. She uses full sentences. She's very articulate. Mm-hmm. And from early on, she would go, I want to see Dr. Hafer. Because she says Dr. Hafer.
Like a fancy East Coaster.
I want to get checked. Like, that's what she wants. I want to get checked. So she has like no fear about it. It seems like a normal course. We're going in the office. Why am I not getting checked? And so she wants that. And so my girls are all asking for it.
I love it.
They know they feel better afterwards.
Yeah. And that's what's so important for people to understand. And if you're listening and you've got kids and you want to get them checked, find a Blair doctor. We're all trained on how to take care of infants and children, and it's super gentle. I mean, the upper cervical correction for an adult is remarkably gentle. It's even really more gentle for a child because there's less force that has to be administered. Yeah, I'm just blessed that you trust me with your family, with your babies, and it has been a really cool thing to see Vanessa from basically brand new to now, how much vocabulary she has and how smart she is and how much she just loves coming to the chiropractor. And most of the time she's just getting checked and there's nothing going on. She's holding.
Yeah. I was worried that I was going to have this child that was held back in some way, shape or form physically. She's not like that at all. She's like absolutely gregarious. She does anything she wants. She has no fear. That's the only problem for me. She'll climb on anything. So there's going to be a lot of falls in her future. I see it, but I'm not scared. I'm not scared because I know that she's going to be okay.
That's awesome. And I think that just reminded me of my little Claire, who is just a few months older than Vanessa. It's interesting how similar they are, but they both had care like the soonest as far as like being able to develop with upper cervical integrity. And it's just awesome to see how bright their light is and how much impact they're going to have. And that's what I also want people to get is chiropractic isn't just about physical pain. Most of the time, is that what brings you in? Absolutely. But it's about being able to develop and have integrity on every level, emotionally, physically, mentally, and have that structure supporting you instead of being kind of an enemy to you.
I spent the majority of my life from an early age, probably around age 9, 10, with severe migraine headaches. Like I would come home from school at 10 years old and I just disappear into my bedroom and sleep because I needed the dark. And no one knew what it was at that time. And it took a while before they said, oh, she has migraines. Oh, of course. And I dealt with that for so many years. And after Alexandra's birth, I had more days, I could count on one hand the days without migraines. So it was like that bad. It was so constant. And I sought everything. And if I had known that I could have gotten relief from Blair Chiropractic, I would have been in there in a minute.
Right.
I didn't. And it took a long path and it took an accident to make that happen for me. But that was the side benefit I got from an accident.
Right.
Was that it took a while before that happened. It wasn't an immediate thing, but they started a lesson and year over year. And now they're so rare. Hardly ever happens anymore.
And you know what? It's like as we grow and as we learn, we do better, right? And so that's where this whole idea of like doing this podcast comes from, is you saying, hey, I have this thing that I think I could help you do, which is this podcast. And then you can then share the information that you do and get it out to the world so that other people don't have to suffer.
That's right. It's like you have a great message. You are passionate about that message. And I just happen to have a vehicle that works perfect for you.
Yeah.
It just really was that case. But the whole idea is that we want to have impact in whatever we do.
Right.
My goal is to make sure that more people can spread their messages in whatever that is, whether I write about them in my column or I get them to become podcasters or they listen to my podcast,
right.
Whatever it is, I don't care. But for you, I just really, the bigger impact you have, then I'm having more impact on the world too. And so that's that sort of collaborative impact level that I want to be at, because that's when we're really resonating throughout the world and really making a difference.
I 100% agree with you, my friend. And I know that there are many other things that I want to talk to you about. So you will not be a one and done guest for my podcast.
Well, I appreciate that. Always happy to talk with you.
I am excited that you took the time out today to spend time sharing with me about your love for Blair Chiropractic.
And my love for you and Dr. Tom.
Oh, yes, Dr. Tom. He's my chiropractor, so I wouldn't be here without him, that's for sure. And why you think it's so important for kids to get checked and what an impact it's made in your family. And I just want to throw one more thing out there, is that when you are the family chiropractor, you get to come to fun events like weddings.
Oh, that's right.
And I got to be the family chiropractor at Alexandra's wedding.
Not only did you get to come and we wanted you there to celebrate with us, but you gifted us with chiropractic adjustment the morning of the wedding. And I have to tell you that I could not have functioned. I could not have made it through that day, that I knew I was out before I ever woke up that morning. And the fact that you were there and it made the day like possible to be enjoyed.
It was
it was a gift.
It was an honor for me to be there, and I just felt like royalty. I was hanging out with the family, and like people flew in from the East Coast, and here I am, just the chiropractor. I mean, not just, but you know what I mean? It's just awesome. And then I got to learn even more history about each of you guys' family and all the friends, and it was a remarkable experience. So thank you for letting me be a part of that. And
well, thank you for participating.
It was fantastic. I'm so thankful for you and for Tom. And I'm so thankful that we got to talk about this today. Listeners, if you want to get a hold of me, you can find me at Well Connected Chiropractic in Mission Viejo, California. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about anything you hear on my podcast, I'd love to hear from you. I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram, and my podcast plays on all the major players. Thank you, Tracy, so much for working with me and for taking time out of your busy day, and I look forward to hearing from you all really soon.
Thank you for listening to Get Your Head On Straight with Dr. Elizabeth Hafer. Visit wellconnectedchiro.com for more details from the show blog post and to learn what Blair Upper Cervical Chiropractic can do for you. To learn more about Dr. Hafer and her practice, you can find her at Well Connected Chiropractic in Mission Viejo, California by visiting wellconnectedchiro.com for more information.